So I grew up in this church. This is my home church ever since I was like, I don't know, 7 or 8, maybe even younger, I don't remember. But yeah, I grew up in this church, and all the way up until high school, I was like serving in youth in high school, as some of you are. I was leading worship, helping out in various ways. And it was all good, on the surface, all was good. I looked like a very Christian kid, that kind of thing, right? But looking back now, it really wasn't like that inside, like deep inside of me. I realized now I did not have a relationship with God like I thought I did. Like I had a lot of head knowledge, right? I had a lot of knowledge like everyone was sharing, right? So, but deep down, like I didn't know what it meant to trust Jesus. I didn't know what it meant to like have a relationship with God. And I think I attribute that a little bit to my upbringing. Not my parents' fault or anything, like they're great, I love them. But I think it's just like the Asian upbringing, a lot of the way they show love to you is through like cooking for you and providing a home and things like that. They didn't really talk to me much about like emotional things or like how to process those things. And there was even a point where I like asked my friend like I told him I don't think I love anyone, and he's like, what? Like what about your family and stuff? I'm like, no, like I don't know what that feels like. I don't know what it is. So just painting a picture, I was very like kind of emotionally detached as a high schooler, right? Went off to university. I went to Waterloo. And when I went to Waterloo, because my faith was not like real in a sense, I didn't go to church for like 2 or 3 years. Okay, so I just kind of focused on school, focused on video games and friends and things like that. Right? And then in third year of university, I got into a relationship with someone, and that one, it really showed like how bad of a person I was in a sense. Like it lasted 8 to 9 months, and after it, like it did not end well, and it revealed a lot of like pride inside of me. It revealed like I don't know how to like love another person. I would like say really mean things, and like I was just like really, really bad. So after that ended, I remember I was in my dorm room and I just prayed to God. I was like, so at this point I haven't prayed in a while, right? Because I was not really a Christian, but I just prayed. I was like, God, like I need you to help me to be a good person. Like I cannot trust myself to be a good person anymore. Like okay, clearly I cannot, right? So I prayed that, and then the next day, I don't know if it was the next day, within like a few days, it was me and my friend, he's right there, Michael. We were walking on campus together, and we were just walking randomly because we were both going through breakups at the time, right? So just imagine 2 sad boys just like walking around Waterloo campus in MC, the math building, which is the most depressing building ever. But we were walking around, right? And we just happened to see like a sign, and the sign was talking about the first Waterloo CCF, which is the Christian Fellowship at Waterloo. So we saw that sign, and it was like, oh, like come in, you're welcome. And it was the perfect timing. First of all, I think it was like just starting, and it was the perfect location too. Like it was, we happened to come upon it. So looking back now, I really felt like that was God like putting it there, kind of thing, or like leading us there, because from that, I think both of us, like, we became Christian. Like, we got to the faith, and and now we're, both Christians. So I went to the fellowship and started going to things, like, had fun. Like, I mentally, I don't know, like, emotionally high moment, gave my life to Jesus during a retreat, but it wasn't really, how it is, like, emotional highs, things like that. So I don't think I really did, but in my head I did. So and then after that moment, I just started getting very like zealous, very excited to learn about God and to to learn about God and things like that. I got baptized in 2019, so before COVID, and things were good. And then I moved to Seattle for my job. So I do like software engineering. So I did an internship there, got a return offer. So I was moving to Seattle after I got baptized. So on paper, like everything looks pretty good. I'm moving to the States, very exciting, things like that. So that's the kind of the first stage of my life, right? So now the second stage is kind of where things go downhill a little bit. So I was in a relationship with someone in Seattle too. Okay, sorry, not two. I don't want to say not the same time as another relationship. Like I was dating someone in Seattle. Okay, that's it. But that relationship, I would say, I idolized relationships a lot around that time. So what that means is like the relationship gave me value and it gave me a sense of like purpose and identity in life, okay? And the way, I don't know if you know how that feels, but like the way that manifests in the way I behave is that like everything in my mind is like if I leave this relationship, like I have no value, like I have no one to care for me, that kind of feeling, like I can't leave this relationship. And the problem was, like in that relationship, I realized I wasn't happy. Like the whole start of the relationship was bad because I was lonely and I wanted someone to care for me and I wanted someone to affirm like me, right? So obviously because of that, those are not, by the way, good reasons to start relationships. If you feel that way, like don't do it. But yeah, so there, after honeymoon phase, things like that, I was just like, oh man, like I don't enjoy being in this relationship, but at the same time I cannot leave because of my, sense of value in it, right? So it was really, really hard. Like she got really, really hurt because of it, and eventually it did end because nothing like that can last. But after that ended, like I was single, right, in Seattle, and every morning I would wake up feeling like purposeless. I was like, why am I here? Like, why am I here? Originally, so in my head I had moved for work, right, but deep down I moved because I wanted to be in the relationship, right? So that's why, like, I didn't know how I felt because I was so emotionally detached. I didn't learn how to, like, process my emotions, okay? So yeah, those periods of singleness were like really bad. They were just filled with like me feeling purposeless, me like trying to find another relationship to fill that void inside of me, right? And then I eventually did get into another relationship, and that one, for similar reasons, I was just very like physically attracted to the person. Also not, good reason, but not the only reason. And around that time, like I mentioned how I like got baptized, became a Christian, right? But my faith was very legalistic. So who knows what like legalism is, or like, yeah, Jacob, what is it?
I wasn't expecting you to have me.
Okay, never mind. So legalism is it's basically when your faith is very like self-righteous. Okay, it's all about like following the rules to the T, like. There's no room for grace. There's all just like feeling guilty, things like that. So I would literally feel things like I don't want to have fun because I don't want to idolize the gifts over the giver. Like it was that kind of like misunderstanding of God's will and God's words, and things like if I didn't read the Bible every day, I would feel so guilty. I would be like, oh shoot, like I didn't read the Bible today. Dang it. And I would feel really guilty. Okay. So if some of you can relate to that, great. Because I'm going to tell you how you can get out of that. So I'm struggling with these two things, okay? So legalism, right, self-righteousness in my faith, and the relationship thing, right? So after the second relationship in Seattle ended, I was just like my whole existence was shattered in a sense. Like that one was really bad. That one really destroyed me. It felt like I would just go to, like after the breakup, I would just go to bed, and every night, like can't sleep till like 4 to 5 a.m. My mind is just like running, like thinking like how can I like get back together with her and that kind of thing. Even though it was like kind of like both of us who like decided to end the relationship. But in my head, like I also realized I had really low self-esteem. And I realized that because even though like I was the one that was unhappy in the relationship, I still felt like she dumped me somehow. Somehow I was just like, oh man, I wasn't good enough for her. But like, that's not the situation, right? So it's kind of crazy how your mind can do things like that. But yeah, I was in a really bad place, basically. I was in a really bad place. Felt a lot of guilt for like my faith and where it was. Like I would think about Jesus dying on the cross for me. And to me, like a genuine Christian, like if you think about that, usually you would feel some kind of gratitude, right? Like some kind of emotion. Like if you're a true Christian, like Jesus dying on the cross for you would bring you, some emotion. But I didn't feel anything. I was just like, okay, cool. But I knew I wanted emotion, right? And then one night, so this is kind of where things changed in one night. I was just sitting on my bed, okay? I was reading a book, and the book said, the power to love your spouse, your partner, comes from an understanding, a true understanding of the gospel, okay? A true understanding of the gospel, of grace. So I was thinking like, okay, well, clearly I don't know how to love my partner. And clearly I don't have an understanding of the gospel because legalism and stuff like that. So I prayed to God in that moment. It was very offhand, not offhand, but like very casual prayer. It wasn't like get on my knees kind of thing. It was just kind of like, hey God, like, can you show me what your gospel really means? Like, can you show me what grace really means? Because I don't think I know. The moment I prayed that, like immediately after I prayed that, I was hit by the most like emotion I've ever felt in my entire life. Like, it was crazy. It was like waves and waves of just like so much joy, right? This was like instantaneous after I prayed that, right? So much, I was like 2 to 3 hours, I was just like crying and laughing in my bed, alone, probably look crazy. Okay. Go picture it. But yeah, that's how it was, right? And like, in that 2 to 3 hours, like every time I thought about like Jesus died on the cross, like, all the things you learn in Sunday school, every time I thought about that, those things never used to make me feel anything, but I would feel so happy, like Jesus died for me, like I didn't do anything to deserve this, and he died for me, and I would just like, another wave of tears would come after that. And yeah, I would like, to prove I'm not lying, I wrote it down. So this is like you can't see it. Anyways, this is like, I was writing down like everything that I was thinking or feeling like during those 2 to 3 hours on a piece of paper. Just like, there are things that like you probably know, like, as a Christian you would know, and you believe these things, but this is the first time where I actually believe these things. Like, I actually believe these things. So that those 2 to 3 hours, I still think about it when I like go through dry seasons in my faith, or when I like doubt things, when I doubt God. Like, I think about that moment. I'm like, okay, I mean, to me, like, that is God like being real. Like, what am I worried about? Like, why do I, I have nothing to worry about. Like, God loves me, and he like healed me, right? And all I did was ask. That's the thing. All I did was ask. So ever since that moment, that was like last year, March. So ever since that moment, like, the way I see God has changed a lot. He's become so much more real to me. I no longer pursue relationships in this way, like in the way I used to. I don't know. Like, I don't have enough words to like explain what really happened. It's just the grace of God to me, and like the love of God. And I think the biggest thing I learned is that like Evelyn was saying, it's not about like you trying to fix yourself. It's not about you trying to like do better. It's about realizing that you can't do better without God. It's like realizing you're very weak. We're all weak. We're all sinful people, and like unless you come to God and ask Him for help, it's like you can't like beat the sin on your own at all. So that's kind of like the main thing I learned that I wanted to like share with people, because I came from legalism background. So if people here feel like they have to work for your faith, it really isn't like that. If you have to work for God's love, it isn't like that at all, right? Like, just genuinely ask God to reveal Himself to you and to forgive you, and like that's all. Like, that's our duty as Christians, right? Is to recognize that brokenness inside of us and rely on God wholeheartedly. Anyways, yeah, so like ever since that moment, I felt like I'm a totally different person. I think there's a statistic that says like for guys, your brain matures at 25 years old. So I would say before that, I blamed the biology for why I was dumb. Okay, I'm just kidding. No. My old youth counselor, Kristen, she, I think when I graduated, she gave me this journal, and this is something she wrote. And like that line really stood out to me when I was reading it. Like, there truly is no greater ambition in this life compared to following Jesus. And before I would read that, I'm like, okay. But now, like, I read it, I'm like, oh yeah, like, okay, I get it now, Kristen, like, I understand.
it really does feel this way, right? Like I think I discovered like my life purpose. Like God healed me from like self-esteem issues. Like I didn't do anything to heal that on my own. Like this is the work of the Holy Spirit inside of me. But yeah, just pursue God first, and everything else will be added to you. Everything that you need will be added to you, right? You'll find purpose in God. You will find unending love and acceptance from God, right? No person can ever give you that. No relationship can ever give you that. So this is just my encouragement to you. I guess as we go into like the prayer time, like maybe if this is something that you want to pray about or like ask God about, like God help me to like understand you more. Help me be more real to me, right? Like sometimes God doesn't feel real to us. Like you can ask Him. You need to ask Him and ask Him genuinely, and I believe He will reveal Himself. So